The new man at church learned everyone's name by his second week. Everyone loved it. I did too at first. I'm a plumber in Dayton. 30 years of it now. And the thing 30 years of it gives you is an ear for things that are slightly wrong. I can stand in a finished basement and tell you there's a slow leak behind the drywall because the room sounds a half tone off. I'm telling you that so you understand where I'm coming from. I didn't get suspicious of this man because I'm a paranoid person. I got suspicious because something behind the wall was dripping, and I'm the kind of man who goes looking for it. His name, he said, was Gary. Said he had just moved over from Indiana for work, and within a month he was everywhere. Parking ministry, setting up chairs before service, driving the older folks to their appointments when their own kids couldn't make it. He'd be the first one there on a Sunday and the last one to leave, and he did all of it with this warm, easy way about him that made you feel like a bit of a jerk for not doing more yourself. And he was a learner. Names, sure, but it went past names. He knew that the Hendersons' boy had a travel baseball tournament coming up. He knew my wife ran the Tuesday quilting group. He knew which nights I worked late. That last one stuck in me, because I never told him which nights I worked late. I barely said 10 words to the man beyond a handshake at the door. Here's the part that first turned my ear, and I know how small it sounds. He told me he was from Kokomo. A few weeks later, he told my wife he was from Muncie, 2 different towns. Now, people misremember a lot of things, but a grown man does not misremember the town he grew up in. You just don't. I don't. So I started paying him the kind of attention I pay to a wall that's hiding something. His car had Indiana plates the first month. Then, one Sunday, Ohio plates. Which, okay, people register their cars when they move. But the new plate frame was from a dealership 3 states away, in a town he had never once mentioned in any of his stories. And the man had a lot of stories. Too many of them, when I started lining them up, had seams that didn't meet. I tried to let it go. I mean, my wife liked him. The older folks at church flat out loved him. There's a real cost to being the guy who says the helpful new member gives him a funny feeling. I knew what I'd sound like. So for a few weeks I just watched, and I told myself I was being unfair to a lonely man who was only trying to belong somewhere. The thing that took it out of my hands was the rides. Gary had started offering to drive my daughter home from youth group on Wednesday nights. She's 17. He framed it as a help, since my wife and I both tend to work evenings, and on paper it was a help. And that is exactly the thing that made it work. He had found the one gap in our week, and he had quietly filled it with himself. My daughter, bless her, thought he was nice enough. A little much, she said, but nice. The thing is, he knew her schedule better than I did. He knew the route home before she ever told it to him. And twice, she mentioned, he was already parked outside the youth building before the kids came out. Engine running. Just waiting in the dark. Engine running. Waiting. I'd heard a buddy use those exact words about his ex once, years back, and they had sat in me wrong then, and they sat in me worse now, coming out of my own daughter's mouth. So I did the one thing I actually know how to do. I traced it back to the source. I started calling churches in Indiana, in the towns he'd named, describing him. It took me a good week of wrong numbers and dead ends. People don't love a stranger calling to ask about one of their members. But I finally got a church secretary on the phone in one of those towns. I described him, the warmth, the parking ministry, the rides for the youth, and she went quiet. The kind of quiet that told me the whole story before she said a single word of it. He'd been at their church, too, under a different first name. He had done the exact same things, made himself useful, made himself trusted, learned everybody's life down to the soft spots. A family that had finally raised concerns. The leadership had asked him to step back, and he had simply vanished, the way water finds the next low spot in the floor. I brought it all to our pastor. The phone number for that church, the 2 hometowns, the plates. I laid it out for him like I was bidding a job, piece by piece, so it couldn't be waved off as one man's funny feeling. To his credit, the pastor moved fast. They sat Gary down after a Sunday service and asked him direct questions. He stayed calm the whole time, smiled, said there'd been a misunderstanding at his last church, that some people just don't like a man who tries too hard. And then, right on schedule. He was gone. Didn't come back the next week. Didn't come back ever. He left a casserole dish in the church kitchen with his name taped to the bottom of it. A name we're not even sure was really his. And here's the part one have to be honest about. This one does not end clean. Nobody was ever charged. He never did the thing we were all quietly afraid he was building toward. There's no mugshot, no court date, no headline with his face on it. There's just a man who spent 2 months patiently learning the soft spots of an entire congregation, and a daughter of mine who rode alone in his car 4 times before her father made a few phone calls. That is the part that keeps me up at night. Not what happened, what didn't happen. By a margin I will never know the size of. I put a camera up at our house after all that. My wife asked me why, since nothing had actually happened, and I didn't have a good answer for her. I just know what a slow leak sounds like behind a wall, and I know that by the time it finally shows itself on the ceiling, it has usually been running, quiet and patient, for a long, long time. I still go to church. I still shake hands with the new folks, and I still mean it. But when a stranger learns my name a little too fast, something in me goes still and starts listening to the wall. I can't switch it off anymore. I've stopped trying to.
6 years in that church, and I'd never noticed the man who never sang. I'll call myself Rosalind. I run a school library in Knoxville. That means I spend my days watching a room full of people, quietly noticing who doesn't belong. The instinct does not switch off on Sundays. I just wish it had switched on a little sooner than it did. He sat 3 rows back, on the left, near the side door. Every single week. And during the hymns, when 400 people stood up and opened their mouths, he didn't. He just watched. Not in a mean way. In a studying way. The way I watch a kid who's about to slide a book into his backpack without checking it out. For a long time I filed it under nothing. People come to church for all kinds of reasons. Maybe he couldn't carry a tune. Maybe he was grieving something he wasn't ready to talk about. You don't walk up to a quiet man in a pew and ask him to explain himself. That isn't how it works. Not here. Not in the South, where everybody gets the benefit of the doubt and a casserole to go with it. So I let it be nothing. For months. Then he started knowing things. It was small at first. He greeted me by name at the coffee table after service. Which, fine. Our names are right there in the bulletin. Then he asked about my daughter. By name. Then one Sunday, he said he hoped her ankle was healing up okay. Her ankle. She'd rolled it at a soccer game the week before. A game I had never once mentioned at church. I told myself it was the prayer chain. We are a sharing kind of congregation. Somebody asks for prayer on Sunday, and word has gone around the whole building by Wednesday. That explanation held up for about a week. It stopped holding the morning I saw him at the grocery store across town. Miles from the church. Miles from anywhere he'd have a reason to be. He had a basket in his hand with nothing in it. He saw me, lifted 2 fingers off the handle in a small wave, and turned down the next aisle. I stood there by the bananas with my heart going. And I told myself, honestly, it's a free country. A man can buy groceries on a Saturday. But the basket was empty. That empty basket. I still snag on it. You don't carry an empty basket through a store unless you're carrying it for some reason that isn't groceries. After that, I started seeing the pattern everywhere. The way you start seeing a word the day after you learn it. His sedan, 2 cars back, on my drive home from work. The same sedan parked across from the school once. Engine running. Gone by the time the bell rang. He never did anything. That was the thing. He was just there. At the edges. With that studying look. A man who had found a way to be near me that I could never quite point at. I didn't act faster, and I still think the reason matters. I was embarrassed. I mean, what was I going to say to anyone? That a churchgoer waved at me at the Kroger. That a man I had taken communion beside owned a car and sometimes drove it. Out loud, it sounds like nothing. Inside, it felt like a hand resting on the back of my neck. Light. Patient. Just letting me know that it could. I did try once to say it out loud. To a woman in my Sunday class. She smiled and said he was probably just lonely, and didn't I think we were called to welcome the lonely? And I felt so small that I dropped it. I went back to pretending my own skin was wrong about him. The thing that finally moved me was the choir loft. We were short on volunteers one Wednesday, so I stayed after the midweek service to reset the sound equipment. Almost everyone had gone home. I was up in the loft coiling cables, and from up there you can see the whole sanctuary at once. And I saw him, down in his usual row, alone, in a dark, half-empty church, sitting in his exact spot, looking up at the loft, at me. I did not scream. I'm a librarian. I went very quiet and very calm, the way you do when a room needs one adult to keep her head. I came down the back stairs. I found the one other person still in the building, an older deacon named Bill. I told him I didn't feel right, and Bill, God love him, did not ask me to justify it. He just walked me to my car and stood there in the cold while I pulled out. By the time I checked my mirror, the man was in the parking lot.
Standing.
Not walking to a car. Not leaving. Just standing in the dark, watching my taillights shrink down the road. I called the church office the next morning, and I'll give them credit here because they did not brush me off. The pastor got very quiet on the phone. He told me he'd already heard a version of this from 2 other women.
2.
He had assumed, the way we all assume, that each one was its own separate nothing. When they finally put the 3 of us in a room together, the picture came in fast, and it came in ugly. He had that sedan. He knew all 3 of our routines, our cars, our kids' names. He turned up at one woman's gym, at another's daughter's daycare. We compared weeks like we were laying tiles, and the tiles made a floor none of us wanted to stand on. The church called the police, and the police did the thing that women in churches so rarely get. They took it seriously the first time they heard it. They found his car, and in it a phone and a tablet, and on those photographs,
Hundreds of them.
taken across months. Women from our congregation, in parking lots, at the store, walking to their cars after the evening service. A few were taken through windows at night. Several of them were of me. The detective described them to me in a flat, careful voice. And even flat, even careful, it was the worst thing I have ever heard said out loud about my own life.
He was charged.
He never touched a single one of us.
He never had to.
He had already been living inside our lives for the better part of a year. In the one place we had all agreed every Sunday to close our eyes and set our guard down. I changed churches after that. 6 years of potlucks and baptisms and 2 funerals, and I gave the whole thing up. Because I could not sit in those pews anymore without scanning the room for the back of his head.
People tell me he's gone now.
That I'm safe. And they're right. It doesn't reach the part that's actually broken. What stays with me is the singing. I used to close my eyes during the hymns. Everybody does. 400 people, eyes shut, hearts wide open, completely defenseless, for 4 minutes at a stretch. That openness is what a church is. That is the entire point of the place. He understood that, too. That's why he never sang. Somebody in that room had to keep their eyes open while the rest of us prayed. And he had quietly volunteered himself for the job. I sing with my eyes open now. I hate that I do it. I do it anyway.
It was my week to lock up. That meant I was the last one in the building. Alone, a little after 9. I'm Desmond, by the way. 37. I direct a choir at a mid-sized church outside Springfield, in the Missouri Ozarks. The lockup rotation is nothing. It's a chore. You wait for the last small group to finish. You walk the building. You kill the lights. You set the alarm. You drive home. I had done it 100 times. It is honestly the least frightening job in the world. Right up until the one night it wasn't. That night, the first wrong thing was a door. There's a side entrance, down by the fellowship hall, that I had locked at the start of the evening. I remember locking it. I remember it specifically, because the deadbolt sticks, and you have to put your shoulder into it. When I came back through all my rounds, it was unlocked. Not standing open, just unlocked. The deadbolt thrown back, sitting there quiet, like it had been that way all along. I stood in that hallway and ran the night backward in my head. Did I unlock it for somebody and forget? Did one of the trustees swing by? I came up with 3 different reasons. The way you do, and I locked it again, and I kept walking. because the only other explanation was a thought I did not want to be holding in an empty building at night. The second wrong thing was in the sanctuary. We keep the hymnals racked a certain way. It's a little thing, a choir director thing that nobody else would notice. And as I came down the center aisle to check the front doors, I saw it. A hymnal in the very back row. Open. Lying open, face up on the pew. Nobody had been back there that night. The back rows had been empty the whole service. I had watched that room from the loft for 2 hours, and I would have seen. I told myself a draft did it. We don't have drafts in that building strong enough to lift the cover of a hymnal. I told myself it was a draft anyway, because the mind will hand you almost anything rather than the true thing. I need to explain something about an empty church at night. For anybody who's never stood in one, it is not like an empty office or an empty store. A sanctuary is built to feel full. The ceilings are high so the voices carry. The wood holds the sound and gives it back to you. So when it is truly empty, the silence has a shape to it, and the shape is wrong. Your own footsteps come back to you a half second late, like somebody a few rows over is matching you, step for step, just out of time. That is when I heard the door. Not the side door this time. The door to the basement stairs, down past the choir room, easing itself shut. A soft, deliberate click. The exact sound a door makes when somebody is closing it slowly, on purpose, so that you won't hear it, which is, of course, the precise sound that makes you hear it. I want to tell you I thought it through. The truth is my body did the thinking, and it did it fast. And here's the thing I'm not proud of and won't pretend about. Part of me. Part of a man that's supposed to go be the one who checks the noise, wanted to head down those basement stairs and put a stop to it. The rest of me knew better. You do not walk toward a sound that somebody is working that hard to keep quiet. The front doors were maybe 30 feet ahead of me. My keys were already in my hand. My phone was in my back pocket, and there was a panic button by the main office. A silent alarm the church had installed years ago and never once used, that I had genuinely forgotten existed until that exact second. So I walked. I did not run. Running tells them that you know. I walked up that aisle at the pace of a man who is just tired and ready for his bed. I pressed the panic button with my thumb as I passed the office, without breaking stride, and I kept going, out the front doors, down the steps, across the lot to my car. I locked the doors. I started the engine. I called 911 with my hand shaking on the wheel. The dispatcher kept me on the line. She told me units were close, that I'd done the right thing, to stay in the car with the doors locked. And while I sat there, watching the dark building in my mirror, a light moved behind the frosted glass of the fellowship hall. A flashlight, low to the ground, moving toward the side door, the one that had been unlocked. The police got there before he got out. They found him in the stairwell down to the basement, with a sleeping bag, a camp lantern, and food wrappers that were not from that night. He had been getting in for weeks. The unlocked side door had been his. The open hymnal had been his. He had been spending his nights in the one building in town where nobody thinks to lock their guard inside the door. I'll tell you the part one don't usually tell people. When the officers walked him out past my car, he was not wild, or strung out, or raving. He was calm, almost polite about it. He looked at me through the car window, and he smiled, and he said something I couldn't hear through the glass. He smiled like the two of us were old acquaintances. We were not acquaintances. I had never seen the man in my life, and that is the part that stayed. The easy smile of a stranger who had been sleeping 40 feet beneath the room where I rehearse, who somehow felt that we already knew each other. I caught my hand on the door latch, scrambling into the car that night, and tore the nail half off my finger. A stupid little injury. The nurse at the urgent care asked me what had happened, and I started to explain it, and I just couldn't get the words to come. I still have the mark where the nail grew back wrong. They charged him with breaking in. I still direct the choir. I still love that room when it's full. 400 voices, the high ceiling, the old with holding all of it at once. But I don't stay late anymore. Nobody closes that building alone now. We go in pairs, which is a sad sentence to have to write about a church. But there it is. And on the nights I have to cross that sanctuary in the dark, I keep my eyes fixed on the back rows, where the hymnal was open, and I move a little faster than I really need to. A church is the one place you are promised you're never truly alone. I used to find that promise comforting. I have learned to think about it a different way.